Lesson 18, Part 1A, Present and Imperfect Indicative of Me verbs. Here are the present active indicatives of me verbs. We've got did-a-me, he-stay-me, teeth-a-me, and afie-me. You can look at them and see the different forms, and then we'll look at a few irregularities. So note the different endings for the first singular and the third singular. We've got me and see, me and see, me and see, me and see. Then there's also a slight difference for the second singular and for the third plural. So for the second singular, instead of it being is, it's just a sigma. And then for the third plural, we've got asi instead of usi. So if we put all of the me endings together, we would see that they are me, si, men, te, asi. Those are the endings for me verbs, primary A endings, that is. Also note, both the third singular and third plural can have a movable nu since they both end with an iota. The vowel of the stem alternates between the long and the short form. So you'll see here up in did-a-me, we have the omega, 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 then we have omicron, omicron, omicron. So that's pretty consistent throughout, having the long form in the singulars and the short form in the plurals. Though do note afie-me over here does get a little bit weird. You don't have to be able to produce any of these, you just have to be able to recognize them. So that shouldn't be too difficult. The present active indicative second plural and the present active imperative second plural are identical, just like with O verbs. Present middle passive indicatives. Now note the only difference of endings here is in the second singular, but this is actually the ending for all forms in the primary B second singular, but with O verbs, the sigma drops out and we have contraction happening. So we see a different form there, but here we have the psi ending, just like we would expect normally, without that exception happening. That's happened almost every other time that we've seen it, but we've seen this with things like kafe mai and a few other verbs as well. New me verbs. The new me verbs look exactly the same, just without the reduplication. Now note, the new me verbs will occasionally show up with O endings like omnue, which is the present active indicative third singular of omnumi. Imperfect active indicative. Me verbs in the imperfect are pretty rare in the New Testament and only ever show up in the third person. So here are the various forms that you will encounter in the New Testament. You can take a look at them. They are a little bit weird looking. You do note there is an augment at the beginning there. Then you can see those un endings for the third plurals. The third singulars do end up looking quite different, though. Pretty much if you run into one of these, you'll probably look it up in a dictionary. Imperfect middle passive indicative, again, only third persons. We've got tas and ntas, pretty much exactly what we would expect, except for this weird one down here, which is fa, which again, you're probably just gonna have to look it up in a lexicon if you run into one of these. Summary, for me verbs, the vowel of the stem alternates between the long and short forms. New me verbs will occasionally show up with O endings. For me verbs, including new me verbs, the present active indicative second plural and the present active imperative second plural are identical, just like with O verbs. And then learn the endings me, si, men, te, asi.